change of places, because recently I've been coming down to your events, so now you're technically on mine, and do you feel like I've stolen a name a little bit? Because obviously you're like the property event, right?
Yeah.
And I'm the Property by Kazy podcast.
Yeah.
Do you feel like Tej is gonna sue me?
Do you know, I'll be a little bit careful because we're trademarked now, you know.
No, I see that.
He's the kind of guy who'll probably go in and try and find people.
He is. Well, for now, right now, we are still the Property by Kazy podcast with myself, Kaz or Kazy from Property by Kazy. And today we've got James Sahota, who's going to be joining us, talking to us all about his experience in property. Before we get to introduce yourself and before you get to find out about him, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Subscribe is free, like is free, comment and ask questions, and myself or James will get back to you, and hopefully we can all learn together. Without further ado, James, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Kaz. Thanks for that introduction, first of all. Yeah, so I'm James Sahota. A lot of you have recently started calling me Uncle James, yeah? So because I'm a little bit older than everybody else, I'm not that old, 39 years old, but for some bizarre reason, people think I'm this old granddad. So yeah, I've been referred to as Uncle James quite a lot recently. I'm 39 years old, I'm a father of 2 boys, I'm a husband, and I'm a full-time property developer. So day in, day out, it's just property for me. I don't do anything else. There ain't no other side hustles going on at the moment. Obviously, I run the property event with the yellow T-man, Tej. And I do a little bit of mentoring, but for a very small select group of people.
Okay, that's nice. That's a good sort of well-rounded intro. And I think, you know, before we get into, you said you're full-time in property now. For a lot of people, getting into property full-time is the dream.
Yeah.
And I know we spoke briefly about what you did before. So if kind of we know a bit of your backstory of like how and why you first got into property.
Yeah, so Kaz, what it was I mean, I was running a print firm, and I was running this firm for 12 years. It's something I started in a bedroom, grew it to a multi-million-pound company. And at the time, I was always dabbling in property. You know, I was pulling profits from the company, and I'd buy, say, a flat. I'll buy a house. I might buy a little project. I was always just dabbling. It was never, ever really that serious. But the kind of penny dropped to me one point when I'm thinking, I'm looking at everything across the year, and I'm thinking, I actually make more money in property than I do from my business. So the business was good because it's giving me huge cash flow. I was expensing everything, had all the nice cars. But was I really making any true wealth that was growing year on year, and that would have been generational wealth to, you know, for my children to have once I'm not here? And then sadly the business went into liquidation, and when the business went under, I thought to myself, you know what, I've got this little dabble that I've been doing for years, which actually is quite a profitable dabble. So at that point I decided that's it, I'm going full-time into property. And you got to remember, man, this was a shaky time for me. I've just come out of a company.
What sort of time was it? Like, how long ago was that?
It's about 3.5 years ago.
Okay, so
still
not that far.
No, it's still fresh, man. Those wounds still hurt.
You know, because people keep calling you Uncle James. I thought you were going to say, yeah, it was about 22 years ago.
No, man. It was 3 years ago. Okay. Some of those wounds are still fresh today because, you know, when you build something from the ground up, I said to my missus when we got married, I said, my first baby was my business. I go, you were my second baby, and then my kids are my third baby. I go, so losing that business, as harsh as it sounds, I felt like I lost one of my children, man, because it was my thing.
Yeah.
So it was a hard thing to get over. And with the support of my wife and my late mum at the time, they said to me, they go, look, you do well in property, why don't you just go into property? And here's me thinking, you know what, yeah, I've done all right with it, but I ain't really understood the process. I haven't really taken this serious enough. And that's where I started educating myself. I thought, you know, I've got this little plot of land that I bought that I was telling you about earlier.
Yeah.
I've never built a new build house in my life at this time. Got no concept of how it goes down. But my wife and my mum instilled the faith in me that I could get it done. You know, they believed in me 100%. I'm glad they did, because at the time I was really shaky with it. But you know what? I listened to them. I went forward. I educated myself. And I pulled off a damn good job. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't easy, mate. I talk about this quite openly on my podcast and with other people that I lost £105,000, man, because of stupidity, because of not having plans in place. And then you got to think, I've just come out of losing a business and I've lost all this money, and then I've gone and lost another 105 grand. I'm thinking to myself, damn, man, this is not looking good. But again, property saved my ass. I was able to go back to one of my early purchases, because it had so much equity in it, I was able to release some more money, use those funds to plug that hole, and the damage wasn't that bad overall. And in the grand scheme of things, when that project was finished, there was such a massive uplift in it that it kind of cancelled out all the losses, and I was just like sitting there thinking, damn man, I did all right on this one, but with the skin of my teeth, man.
Yeah, I think there were so many things in that story, and again, like that you spoke about, I think a lot of the stuff was inspirational, and a lot of the stuff that you spoke about there is a lot of lessons. But to kind of unpack it, there was a few things that I wanted to touch on.
Sure.
The first of which was the idea of, you know, a business failing isn't you failing. Like the actual, you know, definition of a company is that is a separate entity.
Sure.
So as much as we put like heart, soul, blood, sweat, tears into these businesses, and I think you're very right that when you set up a business, it's your baby, you care for it like that. And I completely understand. I've had the same sentiment, and I've had friends and family with that same sentiment. I think one piece of advice that I definitely give, you know, whether you're James's age, my age, like just starting out, that failing in a business doesn't mean you failed in life, and it's going to take a bit of time to get over. But it's like a, you know, failed relationship or a failed anything. It doesn't mean that that's you. You're just, you have to go back and you can't do business again. Because we recently put a post out that was about, you know, the idea of if you don't get a job interview, you don't stop applying for work. And if a business doesn't go well or goes under, or, you know, for whatever reason no longer becomes financially viable, it doesn't mean that you still can't be a business owner. And, you know, that can be a business owner in property or a host of other vocations. But I think just that idea of, you know what, using, like you said, like your late mother, your wife's support to actually have a network of people around you that believe in you is really important. You know, so even when some things in life aren't going well, there's, you know, you can find the silver lining, you can find other things to do. The other element of that is sort of the idea that you'd already diversified. So the fact that, you know, you were making money in the business, and you did speak about having a nice car, and I already know off camera, my videographers at South Point Media love cars, and they're gonna ask you about cars, and I'm gonna have to tell them to shut up, and we've got to go back to filming, but he's gonna ask you about the car, so I'm just warning you from now.
Yeah, sure.
But the fact that you had the nice cars, but at the same time, you weren't living hand to mouth, and that, you know, every piece of money I spend, that I get in, I've got to spend. And I see a lot of people that do that. The more they earn, it's just the more they spend.
Yeah.
And they don't invest, you know, in different asset classes. And for me, property is one of the best. And I think that's one of the reasons why we'll find that you get a lot of interest in what you're doing. And I will get a lot of followers on Instagram and a lot of requests, is because that bricks and mortar asset investment is something that is tangible for us. Like, we're used to it, you know, it's familiarity. We like familiarity. We like the idea of stuff that our parents own properties, our grandparents own properties, so it's our job to own properties as well. And as we start to make money, you start to look to invest. I think the other thing that I wanted to touch on from what you said was that, you know, from your previous business well, not so much that you said, but I wanted to maybe speak to, from running a previous business, how much did that skill set from your previous business enable you to be successful in property from being a business owner?
Yeah, massively. Something you said there, Kaz, which really, I like what you said, that the person is separate from the business. That's massive. You need to remember that, because for a long period after, when the business failed, I kind of thought, shit, that's me done. That is it, I'm over. And then it took a long time to realise that, look, man, there were certain situations here that caused that. But at the time of the business failing, I remember I was blaming everybody and every circumstance that business failed. And only a year after it failed did I look in the mirror and I thought to myself, you know what, James, that business failed because of you. And you got to be man enough to admit that. And I'm looking in the mirror thinking, you overworked the staff, you lost key players, you lost key accounts because you didn't service them properly. When I got ill, I had pneumonia, I was out for about 4 months. I didn't put no safe plans in there. What's going to happen if James is ill? Who's going to step in? So it was a lot of like readjusting and, you know, taking a step back with the ego, you know, and humbling myself and looking in the mirror and saying, nah, man, this is you. You messed this up. This is your fault that it failed. And I'm glad I did that, because if I didn't do that, I would never ever have learned from it. But getting back to your question.
That's the thing, you learnt those lessons, even though you're saying you identified that a lot of the mistakes were me. Going forward then, in future businesses, you are going to know how to, whether you talk about it being the property event, how to service your customers better, in the same way that maybe you lost some key accounts. In the same way you spoke about before, you were doing a lot of stuff by yourself. Now you've got a business partner, that means that you can delegate, and if God forbid you are ill, you know that you've got somebody who can take the reins up. And I think it's these key lessons that when we talk about getting into business and becoming employed or becoming the CEO or the director of a company, that learning to take previous lessons, learning, you know, they always say hindsight's a wonderful thing, learning from the mistakes you've made in the past to allow you to be successful in the future.
Of course. I mean, people laugh at this, but when I told them the business failed and I went and got business mentorship training afterwards with a London company to work out what I was doing wrong, they go, why would you do that when you got no business? I said, because I wanted to know what I was doing wrong and how things went wrong.
Because it's not the end.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
It's literally not the end. Because I've got no business, you know that you're still an entrepreneur, you're still business minded, you still want to have businesses in the future.
I remember sitting there in this class and all these people had businesses and wonderful businesses, and they asked me, they go, James, so what do you do? I said, well, my firm's just gone under and I'm here to try and find out what happened to it and how it went under. And they were just complex, thinking, nah man, this guy, what is this guy even doing here? But for me, it was important to spend that year with this coach to understand every aspect of things that went wrong. And this is where it worked really nicely, because those skills have now transferred into property. So some of the skills I learned within my business or I picked up, I'm now using again. So it wasn't really a failure. It was just a load of lessons that I've learned that are hopefully going to better me for the future.
And that's it. And I think it's whether or not, this doesn't just speak to people that have had businesses that are transitioning to property, whether your business or if your business is a failure or a success. It also speaks to people that are getting into property for the first time. And you may not have run a business before, but your experience at university, your experience growing up, your experience in previous jobs, there's going to be different elements that you can take away from each of your independent life experiences that are going to make you better, or, you know, that are going to make you better in property, or that you can still utilize. So I think when we talk about a lot of like, how do I get into property? A lot of the how you've already done. It's just a case of working out how to apply what you already know to then find a strategy that works for you based on your skill set. But, you know, you were fortunate in that you, despite the condition of the business, you came into property with a degree of capital or equity within existing properties from previous investments. So if we touch on quickly that first deal, so you said it was around here, right?
No, so my actual first
not purchase, but your first deal after coming out of the business.
Yeah. So my first deal after liquidation was a new build house, and it was just down the road in Tooting.
That is also, you know, for someone that's just gone through recent stress, that's compiling stress, I think a therapist would call it.
100%, man.
They might even call it hiding in the fire.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right, man. This tested me, man. It tested it. It nearly broke me. In fact, I think at some point it probably did break me a little bit. But yeah, I thought to myself, you know what, if I'm going to do this, let me just go balls deep with this and just do it. And I know this whole stigma that people think, oh, I've got to do a new build, I've got to do a new build. You don't have to do a new build. It's just something that I had there, a portion of land that was sitting there that we paid 100 bags for, and I'm thinking, it's sitting there, we've got to do something with this. Went through the process, got the planning, and then after...
Did you at any point when you got the planning consider selling?
I did consider selling it at that time, and I'm so glad that I didn't, because at one point it cost me about, say the land cost me 100, with the planning by the time I'd gone through everything, I was sitting at about 135, and some guy offered me 190 for it. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's okay paper just for, you know,
it's a return on investment, 60
exactly,
odd
for,
thousand,
you know, for about
55,
6 months worth of work. But there was something inside me that thought, nah, because if I build this, there's a 1.2 million pound house here, there's a 1.2 million pound house here. I own the little house in the middle, which is going to be, it's such a unique design. There isn't another house like it. It's such a futuristic design. It's got loads of tech in it. And I thought, this house is going to be worth something because it's in between these two prominent locations. So yeah, at one point I thought about selling it, but
what did you have as your GDV when you were deciding whether or not to take that offer? What did you kind of estimate
So
what
I
your
thought,
GDV was going to
in
be?
my head, I thought it's going to be worth, by the time I've finished, it's going to be about 450, 475
And this
grand.
is as a one-bedroom house,
It's a
right?
one-bedroom, two-story house,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
And then I was absolutely shocked. Like, it's a couple of years ago now, that when the valuer came round, he valued it at like 560 at the time, and now it's probably worth about 650.
Did you keep it?
I've kept it.
Oh, you kept it?
I
Okay,
kept
so that's
it.
nice.
I refinanced it, so I've pulled all. That was, people talk about no money in deals. That was literally a no money in deal, and I put 30 bags in my pocket as a little bit of a bonus for myself. But that stuff doesn't happen all the time. When people say no money in deals, it's quite unheard of in London. And when I did that in London, I thought to myself, you know what, this has worked out nicely, and I'm glad I kept it.
A reminder of what the hard work
100%.
is. A reminder that sometimes it's nice to have those that you look back on them and you just say that this is like, it can be something. It could be like whether or not it's somewhere where you're still in the freehold and you get your ground rents and you think, it's good that I still
what
own
it
this
is,
one.
Kaz? It's such a nice house, and it's always been let. And there was a period when I had a little break in the tenancy, but it was only 3 days. So I decided to go down there myself and just do the maintenance work, because I wanted to be within the building. Because when I was designing this, I knew every corner of this house. And I just stood there and I reminded myself of all the lessons this place taught me. And this is finished at the time. I'm looking around thinking, I remember when the builders didn't dig that too deep. They put the wrong steel in. You were standing here with a massive hole in the ground thinking, how do I go home, explain to my wife that I've lost our money, I've lost the investors' money, and I can't finish this. So there's a lot of emotional attachment to this place.
It is, I think it is, and sometimes that's great, and sometimes it's terrible because we keep the wrong things or sell the wrong things because of emotional attachment. So then I just to talk on the house a little bit more, because I think it's really interesting, the idea of new builds for a lot of people is really aspirational, because it's where maybe they want to get to, or it's something that's on their vision board, to whether it's build their own home for themselves or build their forever home, or build a home just to say they've done it. You self project managed the build.
One,
How did you find that, and what sort of tips would you give to somebody managing a project of that size if they're quite early on in their journey?
Well, number one, don't use anybody you know in the gym, like any of your mates, because that's what I did. I used a builder in the gym, and that's where I'm quite a trusting person, and I thought, I've known this guy for a long time. He's like a brother, but he screwed me. So number one, you gotta do your due diligence 100%. You can't trust what anybody says. You gotta go.
And what do you mean by the due diligence? What steps would you take to sort of qualify and quantify a builder?
When I screwed up the first time round with the builder, I thought to myself, nah, this is not happening the second time. So what I did was I actually produced a nice document, a schedule of works that listed every single thing that needed to be done. I had all the drawings there, everything. And then I posted this job out on some of the builder websites like My Builder, Checker Trader.
Do you know the good thing about having like a comprehensive contract and schedule of works is a lot of the time it scares off the cowboys day one.
Exactly, because them guys, no offense, a lot of them can't use spreadsheets. They don't want to be punching numbers in. So you're right, it did separate the men from the boys. And then when I put it out there, I started getting responses, and there was 2 or 3 responses that were really good, because I was putting qualifying questions in here. So I'm thinking to myself, if you're replying to my advert and you can't even respond to the 3 qualifying questions that I've got there, then you're just a waste man. I don't even want to work with you. Anyway, so I narrowed it down to 2 builders, and one was this Hungarian firm that I really, really liked. This guy, anything I asked him, he had an answer for. I said to him, can I go to one of your sites? He gives me 5 site addresses. He gives me telephone numbers. He gives me email addresses for people that he's done work for.
So you got like reference points, and you got existing projects where you can have conversations and actually see their work in progress as well. Because work in progress sometimes it's great to see somebody's previous job, but realistically you also want to see what it's like on a day-to-day basis.
100%, And you know what? I started randomly ringing people. So I rang a guy that he built 12 flats for this guy from the ground up. He's a guy based in Dubai. I rang him and he goes to me, if anything, I was harsh on the builder. He goes, I made him do extra things and the guy just done them for me. I then rang another lady, I think it was in Dulwich. she had a massive extension done. She goes, we changed our plans halfway through. She goes, we were constantly changing our minds. This guy was so adaptable. His team were turning up every morning. The site was left clean. She goes, we feel bad as clients because we didn't stick to the plan in the sense that we added stuff on and this guy never moaned. And I kept getting this same thing coming back. And then I started asking clients, I go, what was he like with his cash flow? She goes, sometimes a payment was due and he wasn't even asking for it because his cash flow was so good. So he could cash flow things. He wasn't coming up to you saying, James, I need $5,000 or I need 10 grand.
Or we have to stop works, have to down tools.
Exactly, there was none of that.
Okay.
So there was all these massive positives coming from him. And then I think the final icing on the cake was when we got our accountant to just check his books, check associated companies. The accountant said, man, he goes, this is one of the first builders that I've seen that everything has gone through the books and he's got solid books and he's got solid assets. And I think based on that, we decided to hire him.
Your due diligence. So I think for those that are thinking maybe, I'm not guaranteeing that you can find that amazing Hungarian builder.
It was a long process.
James has probably tied him up for the rest of his life. However, I think those steps of making sure you do your due diligence, asking to see existing sites, previous sites, recommendations from previous clients, getting that accounting reference to making sure that that they are doing what they say they're doing in terms of the numbers, that they can also cash flow and that they're quite buoyant when it comes to supporting their own business. And then lastly, obviously preparing that schedule of works that is going to clearly outline responsibilities both on your side when it comes to payment and also their side on deliverables. I think is some really good advice for being able to find a good builder. And I think that's great
not
advice.
Only does a contract, schedule of works, all of that, it protects you as well.
Yeah.
And it protects the builder. He knows exactly what he's got to do.
It's just clarity for both sides because we don't know everything, right? We can pretend to and want to as property investors or developers, but the reality is that in certain areas the builders are going to be way more skilled and have way more information. So if there's a misunderstanding between what a word means or an explanation of up to this boundary or up to X, Y, or Z, just having it in black and white means if I make the mistake in the contract, then it's my fault and my understand, and vice versa. And if they say they're going to do something in the contract and they say they're not, it's just for both parties. It stops the falling out, because the worst thing you can have is you have an amazing builder and you're an amazing person as a property developer, but because of a misunderstanding, you end up not being able to work together in the future. Yeah,
communication is big. And I think something you said there, Kaz, about boundaries, is very important to have boundaries with builders, because in the past I've been too pally-pally with a builder, and that's where they take advantage of you. Because look, you've hired them to do a job. I'm not saying don't be a nice human being and treat people with respect, but they're not your friend. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to go out and have dinner with them. You're not going to have drinks with them. And I found when I've crossed that boundary with a builder and brought them into the friend circle, that's when things go wrong, because then they start to
think there can be that element of entitlement.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, there's nothing wrong, for me, respect is paramount in all 100%. Areas, and there's nothing wrong with at the end of a project retrospectively going for a drink and being like, I can't be, I think you got me on that one, and I've got vice versa, and but going forward, this is what we're going to do going forward. But I think mid-project, it's not always advisable. Yeah. Everybody's different. Everybody runs their businesses different. And for some people that do and maintain great relationships and friendships with their build team and various other people within their sort of dream team in the property space. Pause. Stop. Sorry. Quick intermission. As we have no sponsors, you're the sponsor right now. So subscribe to this video if you're enjoying it. Also, if you haven't already, like, comment, all that good stuff. Now, back to the video. So that's managing that project and managing builders. But obviously, that's just one project. And I know you've done a lot more. So kind of give me a little brief synopsis of your experience and experiences in what you've actually done in property.
Yeah, sure. So before that one, where I said to you I was dabbling in property, I've done some bits where I've actually done a planning uplift, which was quite a nice one, where I bought a shop in Croydon. So it had a 2-bedroom flat upstairs and it was a shop downstairs. And this was a few years ago when there was a massive hype on the new Westfield. And I kind of noticed that people were getting planning permission to turn their shops into 1-bedroom flats or 2-bedroom flats. So that's exactly what we did. We bought that. Again, we got that from a woman who had inherited it. She's never had any money in her life, so she gave us a real good deal because she wanted the paper from there as quick as possible. And it was a planning exercise on that. Literally, we got an architect to draw up some drawings for us, submitted them, got the planning on it, sold that planning uplift, made money on that one. I've done bits where Victorian houses into 2 flats. I quite like those ones. Made the typical mistake of not soundproofing one too well, so that's now causing me issues where I've got to go back and soundproof it. But again, a great exercise, man. I always... Oh, shit.
It's alright.
I'll just carry on.
That was just a deal ringing. You see, the deals don't stop when you're like Uncle James.
That was the alarm saying go to the gym. Yeah. So I always like taking on projects where I can try and squeeze so much value from them or add value to them, you know. And I think it's exactly what you've done here, where we're sitting here. You've got a big old lump of a property and you've created multiple units in it. So I've done bits where I've created multiple units. Your standard buy-to-lets where purchase stuff where it's gone into probate or family members are desperate to sell stuff, renovated and broke ceiling price on rent or broke sale prices. And most recently, my now go-to thing, or for the last few years, has been HMOs. I absolutely love HMOs because it's for me, it's all about spreading my risk across multiple tenants, and again, getting the maximum value out of a property, maximum value that I can get out of one deal.
HMOs are super popular, and it's one of the most common questions that I get asked about. When I go to these networking events, it's one of the most common topics that come up of how to maximize them. And what are your... Actually, whereabouts do you invest when it comes to HMOs?
So I used to invest in East London with HMOs, but obviously since it's become Article 4...
Everywhere, the whole of East London, basically.
Yeah, I mean, literally, you look at a map of London, you're like, what are the areas left that are not Article 4? And I think it's like Bromley, you got Hackney, you got Ealing, but all these areas are just mad expensive. So I've started now moving out to the outskirts.
Do you know it's quite good still, actually? So like Lewisham, it's only specific wards in Lewisham that are Article 4, and it's like the Bellingham ward and somewhere else. So a lot of Lewisham and a lot of Catford are still actually quite good for HMOs.
But it's still big money getting in there. So I've gone out into Essex. I don't really want to say where I am at the moment, Kaz, because I know a lot of people, because I feel I've spotted a little kind of gap in the market here, and I want to really go in and exploit it. But let's just say it's in Essex. I've moved out into Essex now.
I mean, we're definitely about to just company house you and have a look at some of your acquisitions, aren't we, James?
But yeah, so I've gone into Essex, and right now it's the first time that I've had to use specialist development finance as well. So now this is where things get even more not complex, but you've got to be super organised when you're using development finance. You've got surveyors coming in. So I've got 2 multiple HMO constructions going on at the moment in a new borough, in a new location, with development finance and with specialist finance, bridging finance to buy the places. So now the planning's just gone up tenfold because I now have to explain to someone where the pennies are going. Whereas before, when it's all coming out of your own pocket or it's coming from investor money, you can be a little bit lax with budgets. And
there's not so much accountability because generally speaking, when you get development finance, it's drip fed. So you spend 20,000, they'll give you another 20,000 based on you providing the receipts and showing the evidence of the milestones that you've hit within that specific project. And I think that's something for people that, potentially when we have conversations about how can I get into property with less money, that there are avenues you can go down where your money in day one will be less, because you get development finance. If you can show the uplift or you have planning in place and you have an increased GDV, you can sometimes even get 100% purchase price. You can have a lot less money in.
I've just got that on my most recent deal, 100% purchase and 100%.
But the other side, particularly when you don't have assets to back that up as security, or you don't have the experience, you are potentially over leveraging and you're exposing yourself to a lot of oversight, and basically you're at the pinnacle of your risk. Like if one thing goes wrong, then the whole house of cards could fall down. So I think you just have to always think, and I say it all the time, but think about your attitude towards risk and what you're willing to risk in any given circumstance.
I love how you said that the house of cards can come falling down, because it is that. It's all good me saying to your listeners and viewers that, I've got 100% purchase and I've got all the money I need for the thing, but I've put up a security address on this. I've personally guaranteed this. So if something goes wrong, it's going to go horribly wrong. And if the domino falls, it's taking every other domino down with it.
And I think that's it. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it, and it doesn't mean that you should do it. But what you should do is based on your personal circumstance, based on your attitudes, and based on all different things that, make up the deal, how good the deal is, how tight the numbers are, how much money you hope to make. You make an informed decision about what way is best to finance and if it's best to proceed with a deal, because sometimes the best deal you do is the one you don't take.
Yeah. And just something to add to there where you're saying you need to know your risk tolerance. What I get a lot of the people that I work with, I ask them to do a personality test, like a psychometric test, so you can understand what your risk tolerance is. Because if your risk tolerance is really, really low, I would 100% not advise you to go for bridging finance or development finance, because there's going to be times when you're going to have some sleepless nights and you're going to be thinking to yourself, damn man, have I made the right decision?
That with a bridger, with short-term lending, you have bridging up until a certain point. So you have bridging for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, whatever the case may be. But the day you go over that pre-arranged agreement, you'll have a documentation fee of probably, if you're lucky, 1%. So if you've borrowed £500,000, that's £5,000 you have to pay day one. If you've also borrowed £500,000, chances are you're going to be on a rate of anywhere between, if you've got great credit and maybe a lower loan to value, 0.6%. If you've got bad credit and a higher loan to value, maybe 1.2%. So you could have to then pay monthly payments of anywhere from £4,000 to £6,000 on a monthly basis. And if you don't have a what if, a contingency to deal with that, then that's massive exposure. And that's when some businesses do meet those cash flow problems or do get into the unfortunate circumstances of repossession. So I think planning and making sure that that deal is right for you, and not just doing a deal because it's the only deal available or because you think, okay, I'll get it over the line and work it out later. You do have to have a plan for the duration from A to Z of how you think your project is going to pan out.
Yeah, really well explained, man. Yeah.
So you touched on as well, you said that you speak to people, and I know I've seen in your bio that you have like a HMO, I want to call it mentoring. Would that be where to sort of position it right, or a training program in regards to taking people on if they do want to take on HMOs and build a HMO portfolio? Yeah,
so the way that came out was, it's like, again, when you say people ask you about HMOs all the time and it's a new buzzword, people love them. And I get asked about it all the time. And then I thought to myself, you know what, let me put together something that just takes somebody on a journey, but takes them on my journey. Because I've made some mistakes, I've lost some money and I've done things the wrong way. So I've actually recorded a full-on course which is called yourhmocoach.com, and you can log on and register. The course is almost ready, and it's just 70 hours of content that's taken.
Am I going to get like an affiliate link? If I get an affiliate link, it's going to be in the bio.
/Kazy.
If I don't have an affiliate link, you're going to have to go and find James and do that extra 1 second of work.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah. So I decided to just record, and it's broken down into loads of little modules, because I did run an in-house training course a little while ago, which was a 5-day course over a period where people got to see a whole live HMO project from start to finish. They get to do site visits and they got the classroom training. And then it occurred to me that for this to be reachable to other people, it needs to be online.
And scalable, yeah. That's a lot of the time with property education, in terms of it's full circle, that you don't want to be, from our perspective, or from an educator's perspective, you don't necessarily want to be trading time for money, because you get to a point where your time is so valuable, the course becomes too expensive. So I think online is always a good way to kind of create those deliverables. Will there be any access to yourself? Is there any ongoing support in it?
So what I've done is there is a Discord group, and the reason why I want to do a Discord group is because I want to split it up into different categories so people can understand about the schedule of works, payment plans, sourcing, whatever. And I want to try and build a whole HMO community around that. So the people that sign up and who are actually actively going through the course, they're actually learning off each other as well. So you're building your own community with other people that are working with you. And then, once a month there's a 1-hour mentorship call or a mastermind call, where if you've got questions, I feel having a whole group together, feeding off each other, growing together, working together, maybe even doing joint ventures together,
Yeah.
building a community.
Building those relations. That sounds interesting. Am I going to get the Discord invite?
Yeah, of course you
Can
are.
I get the invite? Yeah. I only learned about Discord just because of gaming, because that's where Discords became
My
like
son
big.
saw it on my phone, the app, and he goes, Dad, you a secret gamer? I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, Discord is for gamers. It's not for property
that's
people.
where it started. But yeah, now a lot more people use it,
Yeah.
and you see all sorts of groups there because, like you said, they do have ways where you can break down the individual
I
group
think it's
into.
fantastic.
No, it's a nice platform. Maybe they can sponsor us. You know, whenever I mention a brand's name, I always think I do need some sponsorship. That conversation around education sort of leads me into one of the last things I wanted to talk about, which we touched on earlier. That was the property event.
Mm-hmm.
So you've also got into doing in-person events with Tej, as we mentioned, the man with the unusually, he has trousers that are somewhere between full length and 3/4 lengths, but they're in a weird space, and we're going to at some point get an official definition for what they're
He had a
called.
fresh pair on last night, and I think over Christmas he's got ones with like nice cords in the middle.
Okay, the boy's stepping up. It's good to see Tej. You know. We'll see. I don't know what socks. I know he wore some off-brand socks with them, but regardless, he's a really good educator. He speaks amazingly with a lot of confidence and a lot of conviction. How have you found that going, and what are your? Because I've had different, you know me that I've had some different thoughts in regards to networking events as a whole. But how have you found it?
On the whole, it's been really good.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, me and Tej came together first lockdown. We decided to just bring, because I've got my own podcast, he's got his podcast. We decided let's bring one and do a fusion podcast together. It started off as a bit of a gimmick of him taking a mick out of me taking a mick out of him, a bit of abuse. But we realised quickly that this is something that people really like. So following on from the podcast, we always wanted to create an event because we feel a lot of the events out there are not that welcoming. They're not. If you're new to property, you just can't walk into one of those and you feel like, oh man, who should I talk to? I'll just stand here. So the whole thinking behind the property event was to bring people together, to build a community, but to build a friendly community, to build quite a chilled community where you can come in and be like yourself. You've done loads of deals. We had people like Savoy's there who have done masses of deals. And then we've got people there that want to get into property but just do not understand the whole process. So what I really like about our events are I see newbies talking to multimillionaires, I see multimillionaires talking to newbies, people giving advice, and it's become a bit of a kind of support network that meets once a month for property people, because I always say property can be quite a lonely place at times,
Oh yeah, I mean business as a whole, as an entrepreneur as a whole, but property potentially in particular, because at some point, when I got into property, I was the only one in my circle doing properties.
Exactly.
There wasn't really anybody.
So you
to,
need
to work
like-minded
with.
people, and I think once a month when we all get together, we're bringing a good speaker, and it's going well. It's going well.
No, I've enjoyed it. I think because my thing is very much that you touched on. I've probably been to 4 or 5 property networking events. First couple I went to was at an old business, and at that point in time, I wasn't, I think, I can't remember. I think it was Pin or Prosperity or one of them I'd went to. And I just felt like I wasn't allowed to speak because I didn't have tens of millions in property.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it was very cliquey, and the same people were talking to the same people. And not to say that there aren't, because I've only been to a few, so I can't say that's what they're all at, but that was maybe, I was quite introverted as well. And I think I spent most of the time speaking to the waiter or the cameraman there, because that was who I just got on with talking. It was nothing about property. But definitely I think the property event, I've come, even times where I couldn't make the event, I've come to just the networking after, because you speak to some good people and I've made some good contacts there. So I think for those that are looking to sort of dip their toe in the networking water, that it's a good place.
Yeah, it's something a young lady said to me yesterday as she was leaving the event. She goes, this is the first event I've ever been to. She goes, thank you for making me feel so welcome. She goes, I felt so relaxed that I was actually able to ask a question. She goes, and I'm one of those people that goes to an event and I don't really ask questions. I sit there quite quietly. She goes, but I felt that you guys had created this nice platform. It was so inviting that I could just be myself and talk.
Yeah, because even I think what it was before when Tej was doing he ran the last event, but I think even Tej as a whole, and obviously you now, that like the first event that I spoke at was one of his events, and I think just because of the confidence that he had and just the sort of the relaxed environment, it meant that even though I was like, look, I don't do public speaking, I'm not really sure about this, I felt a lot more confident and was able to do things. So I think it is a good place, and you know, for those that are interested, I'm sure that you can contact James and he'll let you know about sure. when they're on next.
Just jump onto the website, propertyevent.co.uk, and it's got all the year's events listed already.
Oh, nice. So what's next for James? Like, what does 2022 look like for James?
So Kaz, like, unlike other people that just want to keep booming and doing deals, this year is all about, I want to do 4 HMO deals this year by the end of 2022, which is quite, I think it's a realistic target. Some people would say, you know, because they take a long time to produce.
No, they do.
And the reason why I want to do that is because I want to now start concentrating on doing a little bit of living. You know, I'm going to be 40 next month.
I saw you looking at a Porsche.
I've had a few before.
So, I know we spoke about. I saw you gone full circle. I've seen the living is coming back.
So I want to do a little bit of living, and one of the things I've always wanted to do is move out of London.
Okay.
And move into a family home, because you know what it is. When you're in property, it's like a builder. His house always get addressed last.
Yeah, 100%.
And for me, you know, God bless my wife. She's been so good in such a small place, and now it's just like, this is just nonsense, because I show her some of the developments we do, and she's just like, why are you showing me this? She goes, other houses are way better than how we're living. She goes, and you ain't done nothing about it. Every year you say you're going to do something, and then you use that money in another deal.
Do you know the problem is though? Because as property developers, although we call ourselves developers, like if we wind it back, we're investors, and investors mean that we have to get as much money out of we have to make our money work for us.
Yeah.
And when your money is sitting, like when a large amount of money is sitting in your own home, it's not working for you. So it's give and take, and it's chicken and egg. But also at the same time, you said like you need enjoyment, because what you're doing it for is for a good standard of living, and there's no point making all this money and not being able to enjoy it. But I think that's good, and I think that is something that a lot of people, you know, need to hear, in terms of it's okay not to always be the best property developer, and sometimes just be the best you. Like enjoy your life, enjoy your time. Like, you know, spend money on something that's going to make you happy for the short term and for the long term. And I think that's some great advice.
So, like to recap on what you said, 4 deals this year, then that's me done. Moving to a new area. I want to be closer to some of my family. So we're going to move to a new area. And I've always wanted to build my own house, like most people do. So I'm going to concentrate on finding a land, building my own house. And you know what? I'm then going to do deals that I want to do. And they might not necessarily make me loads of money, but I quite like creating a product. Once the product's been created, I'm quite bored after that. You know, sometimes for me, it's not always about how much money a product's making. It's about actually going through the whole cycle of creating. So once the projects are done, once we're in a new area, once the house is built, I'm just going to concentrate on doing maybe 1 or 2 things that just don't stress me. You know, wake up in the morning, do the school run, go gym, have a coffee, and just chill.
You sound really like, do you remember, I think it's Disney Cinderella, when she wakes up and the rabbits are going round her and everything's flying and working perfectly. Is that the way is that sort of life goals 2022?
That's how I vision it. But like as my wife says, she goes, you're going to get bored. And I know I'm going to get bored.
But then it goes full circle. And and I think that is a really good place to kind of like get towards the end of this podcast, in that what we're working for in business and in life ultimately is choices.
Yeah.
Because to have the choice to focus on you is great. To have the choice to have the resources to go back and do business is great. And to be able to flitter in between and do what you want when you want is really what I think defines a lot of people's goals and success. And I think so that's, you put it really eloquently in terms of what you're trying to achieve.
To add to that, Kaz, I mean, like I said to you, last year I lost my mum, and my mum is one of those people, she worked hard her whole life, and dealing with her probate now, I see this. You know, she scrimped, she saved, she had some savvy investments, but she never done no living, man. She never enjoyed it. And I remember seeing her in her last days, because I was holding her hand when she took her last breaths, and I'm thinking to myself, this was the year that this woman was going to stop working, because she turned 65 and died 2 weeks later, and it was all sudden within 6 months getting a brain tumor and just passing away. And I thought to myself, nah, I need to live my life, because I've got one life only, and when I'm on my deathbed, I ain't going to be thinking about raising finance, I ain't going to be thinking about the next deal, I'm going to be thinking about how much time have I got left with my children and my loved ones. So my perspective has kind of changed a little bit, you know, because I know time waits for no man, and I want to make sure I enjoy as much of that time as I can have I've got left.
No, I think that is well, again, sorry if you lost my brother, but
Thank you.
I think the you know, the small choices that you can take, you know, the education and the experience to say that, look, you know what, you're gonna live more and live, you know, in part for your mum and do the things that she would have loved, because part of, like, you know, that of growing is that, you know, we pass the advice on to the next generation, and that the idea of, even if she didn't do everything that maybe you look back at mum and say, oh, mum would have loved to have done X, Y, and Z, the idea of you doing way more, I'm sure would make her even happier. So final question that I've got for you before I let you go, James, is the question we ask all of our guests. It's the one question that consistently we ask everybody, because it's the one question people always ask me. And that question is, if I'm a young adult, so late teens, early 20s, and I want to get into property, what would you advise them?
My biggest bit of advice would be get yourself educated. There's lots and lots of content out there. When I started, there wasn't that much content, but now with social media, especially like Instagram, all you need to do is go and follow the right people. You can follow someone like Kazy, see his projects, you know, and get onto YouTube. There's so much information on YouTube, and of course, there's so many property books. You know, consume all of this content. You know, load yourself with information, arm yourself with knowledge, because knowledge is power. And then lastly, make sure you got some self-belief, because I think if you've got some self-belief, you're going to win straight away. You know, believing in yourself is the biggest thing that you can go out there and do it.
I think that's some really good advice. Gonna add that to all the other advice we've got. So for everybody that's been asking, how do I get started? We've got another tip for you to help you progress on your journey. James, it's been amazing having you on.
Thank you so much, mate.
For those that don't already know you or don't know where to find you, go on, plug yourself. This is your opportunity. What are you selling to us right now?
So you can find me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active, and it's James H Sahota. So that's James, the letter H, and Sahota, Sahota. I'm on Instagram all the time. You'll see me from the point of the morning going out for a morning run. You'll see my day. You'll see me interacting with my children out on site, doing all kinds of stuff. And also, I've got my new Your HMO Coach course, which is me, Your HMO Coach. And the whole course is, again, like I explained in the podcast earlier, is about taking somebody from the beginning to the end on creating their very own HMO with over 70 hours of content delivered by myself. And it shows you all the mistakes I've made, so hopefully you don't make them and you create a successful product.
Amazing. Well, that has been another episode of the Property by Kazy podcast. As always, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you've liked today's episode, make sure you like this video. And lastly, if we've missed anything, if you've got any questions for myself or James, use that comment section and one of us will come back to you. Thank you very much.